Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to go back to the New Zealand being removed from the whitelist issue in just this final stage of the committee stage on this bill around the title and commencement. It's important to point out that that whitelist includes countries such as Australia, Brazil, Canada, Hong Kong, India, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Singapore, Switzerland, South Africa and United States. Now, that whitelist is actually not everybody in New Zealand would know what that whitelist was, but actually being removed from it means that banks and other financial institutions in the EU, for instance, in the European Union, can no longer accept and acknowledge the, quote, know your customer identification and analysis performed in New Zealand. Now, it would seem to me that that's actually something that we should be a bit worried about and a bit ashamed of. I'd be interested to know whether, I understand that back in 2012 when we got removed from that whitelist that there was a bit of flurry of activity by various ministers, including the Minister of Justice over there and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, about trying to get us back on that whitelist. It'd be quite interesting to know, because I just did a wee Google search on it, as to whether we are back on that whitelist. Can anybody confirm whether we are or not? No, everybody's got their heads down, so I'm presuming that we're not. Now, so actually that is quite significant. So it's actually, well, so are we or aren't we? Are we back on the whitelist? Are we back on the whitelist, Minister? Are we? If we are, that's a good thing. But let's actually hear from you as to whether we are or not. No answer? No. Clearly we're not. So that's 2 years. 2 years since we got removed from that whitelist. We got removed from that whitelist because we needed to change our laws. We needed to change our laws and put in place more restrictions on the way that businesses were operating in this country and white-collar crime was actually being conducted. Well, we've dragged our feet. The government's dragged its feet. Hasn't actually done the best it could for New Zealand businesses. And as a result, we have a black mark against us in the international environment around the way that New Zealand does its business. And I think that should be reinforced, because this government pretends that it's the government that is there for businesses and for good business practice. In reality, well, can you dispute the facts over there on the other side of the House? We did get removed from that list. Have we actually got back on it? If we have, then then that's good. But clearly we haven't. Mr. Chair, this bill has taken far too long to get through the House. It's really important to have robust debates. We need the time in Parliament to have those robust debates, but there's been too much time in between those robust debates. So we're not seeing the legislation actually make it through the House in the way that it should, where it actually impacts on the white-collar criminals and the behaviours that lie behind them, and the behaviours that are condoned in a system that should be being fixed. The issues were identified at least 3 or 4 years ago. They haven't been acted on fast enough. It's an indictment on this government that they haven't done that. They haven't done it because they've been pushing through legislation that's impacting on other aspects of their agenda, which is a political agenda and which is an agenda about making the vulnerable more vulnerable and working people's lives harder. Actually, not holding to account the behaviours in business, which are behaviours that we as a country should not be condoning. We support this legislation because it's important. We did a lot of work in the Select Committee to improve the legislation, to make it more effective Unfortunately, it's taken far too long for it to get back before this House, and it's going to take even longer for it to get passed and then for it to be commenced and actually put into law. I think that's an indictment on this government and the way that it has conducted itself over the last 6 years. It's actually not about holding to account the white-collar criminals in our country.
Jamie Lee Ross.
I move that the question be now put.
There's been a lot of repetition. The question is the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. There are some amendments to clause 2 set out on SOP number 465. Question is that the Minister's amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that clause 2 as amended stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Minister.
Mr Chair, I move supplementary order paper number 466 dividing the bill.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report this bill with amendment and so divided presently. Members, we now move to the Victims Order Against Violent Offenders Bill. When we were last considering the bill, we were debating Part 2. Carol Beaumont.